Alright, what we have here today is an app from the MID App Inventor. We're gonna look over the source code as well as the actual Android app. It's my app loaded. Now, it consists of this default screen that you get on the first time. I can divide it into three main parts. First, we have this quote on the top. And the second is this analog clock supported by a digital one. And in the end we have buttons for the other screens. That's like the main part of the app. Now for the first part, we're going to talk about the quote on the top. Now this quote refreshes every time you refresh the screen. Now I've got this screen right here. This is the text for label 2. It shows that's the place where I put the quote in, is this label 2. Now if you go to the blocks, I've created a global variable as quotes, and I've also made a list with all of these quotes already present in it. Now this is screen 1. Now when this screen starts, when the screen initializes, then I've also created a local variable named index, and I've set it to any random integer from 1 to the length of this list. And I've also set label 2 with this label here for the quote. I've set this label to text to select any list item from this list and this index, which is the local variable that I've named as index. Now for the next part, we've got this analog clock. It's got a digital clock right beneath it. It's pretty easy. It's actually the canvas, and I've painted the clock on the canvas on the instant. It fetches the time. I put a non-visible component as clock, and it actually fetches the time from your phone. And that's 7:20, so it's military time. It gets 19:20, 40, that's the seconds, and the clock's shifted to it. For the clock part, as I said before, I've got this canvas, and I've also got this this label over here. Yeah, it's not got any text in it right yet, but I'll show you the blocks when that function is carried out. Then this will contain the digital time. Now for the blocks, I've created 3 global variables as hours, minutes and seconds, and I've set them by default to 0. Now when clock1.timer, I've also in the non-visible components a clock, and I've set it to enabled. So when this clock when that clock.timer starts, when the clock fires, then I've set all of these 3 global variables. I've set all of these 3 global variables to call clock1.hour, minute and second at that particular instant. That's why .now. Further, I put 3 if then else statements, and that's just to put a 0 before the hours, minutes and seconds if they're less than 10. Next, for the analog part, before that I have set this, as I said, label 1's text. This is label 1. Now I've set its text to global hours, global minutes, global seconds. Now for the analog part, I've called canvas 1 to clear for the starting, and I've set its paint color to white. Now I want canvas 1 to draw a circle, and I've put the x and y coordinates, and I don't want it to be filled. I just want the outline. And now I also drawn a text that's 12, 3, 6 and 9. And after that I set the line width to 2. That's a little thin and even thinner than the outline. Now I call canvas 1 to draw a line. So this part is basically for the seconds hand. Now what it actually does, I've created a mathematical code here which sets in which the canvas paints a new second hand each time a second passes with the seconds, and that's like 6 for the degrees it moves. Similarly I've done for the minute hand, and as well as I've done for the hour hand. For the third part, we've got these buttons here. Now they take you to another screen. First of all, we go to the to-do list part. Now this to-do list takes you to the screen where it says enter your task. So as the name suggests, it's a to-do list. Now when I enter this task as something, prepare for a meeting, and when I enter, then by default the text is removed. And now this text that I just entered is set as a new task in my pending tasks list. To show that, I'll just change the switch, and that's my list. And for removing a task that I've already done, for example, now I've prepared for the meeting, then I can simply press on that task and it will get removed from my list. Alright, that's this to-do list that you just saw. Now over here, I'll go to blocks. Now I've created another global variable in this to-do list screen. I have named it td list for to-do list, and I've created it as an empty list. Now when this screen initializes, when this screen starts, then I've set this global variable to call tinydatabase1 to get a value. So what it does is actually it fetches this value with tag tdl, and if the value is not yet present, for example if the user has opened the app for the first time, then it actually creates an empty list. Now I have also set listview1.elements to get global list. Now this is the tinydatabase1, and the to-do list is actually a non-visible component, so you're not able to see it here. These are non-visible components. I've set it to non-visible because you want to change the switch to view them. So this is listview1, and now I've changed its elements to get global list. Now when the enter button is clicked, then I want to add items to this list, the get global list, and I also want the thing you've entered, your task that you've entered in the text box 1 to get to this list. Now again I call the tinydatabase1 to store this value with this tag that I've already created, and the values to store is from the global to-do list. Now again I've set the listview1.elements to whatever the thing is present in to-do list, and since now you've entered, I don't want you to enter it again and again. That's why I've set it to blank. Whenever you press enter, then the text box will by default be set to blank. Now this is the part where you remove the list item. So when list view 1, after picking, when you press the list view 1, any element in list view 1, then that item will get removed from this list, and this is the selection index of list view 1. Again I call tinydatabase1 with this tag tdl that I've already created, and now I want the value to store is get global to-do list, since I've removed that item, that element from the global to-do list from here. Now last I want set listview1.elements to this global list, and that's just a thing to show the pending tasks to be visible. That's why it's true, as well as the vertical arrangement 7 to be go away, and that is this one, vertical arrangement 7. Now for the next part, we go to your notes. It takes us to the screen where it says enter new note. Now this screen is actually pretty similar to the to-do list part. Just for a separation of your notes with the list, I've created this new screen. Similarly, I enter a new note. For example, the note is ABCD or trial 1. Then I enter this note, and now I go to my notes and I can simply remove it just as I did previous time. Now we've got this function as stopwatch. I've named it as stopwatch, but it's got 3 functions inside it. When I click it, it gives me 3 functions. I've got stopwatch, alarms, as well as timer. So first of all, for stopwatch, it's a simple screen. I get start, stop, and reset buttons. The stop and reset buttons are by default disabled because you cannot stop or reset unless and until you've started the stopwatch yet. So when I click on the start button, the stopwatch starts. It's giving me time also in milliseconds. 6 seconds have passed. Now you can see the start button as well as the reset button have been disabled, and the stop button is enabled. Now I click that and I can get another reset button is enabled, as well as start and stop is disabled. Now I've reset it, and now if we go to alarms, so it says enter alarm name. Now I can set it as anything, like meeting at, it's 7:35 right now, so I can keep it at 7:40 maybe, but for trial basis I'll just keep it at Okay, it says please know that the time must be entered in military style, so I get 12 plus 7, that's 19, as well as the for trial basis I keep it 36 only, and I press set new alarm. Now alarm is set for 1 minute from now. It gives me this message, and by default the alarm name is removed as well as the hours and minutes. Now we'll wait for a while until the alarm rings. Yeah, now the alarm's rung. We get dismiss and snooze options. For now I'll dismiss the alarm. Now we've got the timer availability here. Now it says enter time and the seconds here, so I'll enter 90 seconds for now, and I press enter, and the text box gets set to value 0 as well as the timer value sets to 90. Now when I press start, the timer ticks away. Now I've got this stopwatch screen right here. As you can see, there's the same layer we just saw. Now I go to blocks, and now I've created a global variable time underscore start, and I've set its value by default to 0. When the screen initializes, it's 0. And now we've got the start, stop and reset buttons. So when the start button is clicked, then I want the clock1.timer to be enabled. That's why I've set it to true. I've got this clock1 here. Now I also want to set global time start, this variable, to call clock1.now. That sets this global variable to actually the time that's present in your phone. That's why I've set call clock1.now. And I also want the start button to be disabled. That's why I've got false, as well as the stop button to be enabled. Now when the stop button is clicked, I want the timer to be disabled, stop to be disabled, as well as reset to be enabled. Now when reset is clicked, then I want the time under dot text to be set to 000, and that's this part, time, and I want the start button to be enabled so I can restart the operation again, and I want the reset to be disabled. Now here I've created a procedure with X. I've put a if then else statement. Now if the length of this X is equal to 1, then I want to add a 0 before it, or if it's not equal to 1, then I can simply get X. Now this clock1, when clock1.timer ticks away, that's exactly when you press start, then I've created a local variable and I've named it dur for duration, and I've set it to call clock1.duration, and I've set the start and end times at global time start, as well as call clock1 now. End time is call clock1 now, and start time is get global time start. That's what we set it here. Now in this local variable, I've set time.text, that's this label again, and I've set it to a couple of things. I've joined the hours, minutes and seconds, as well as the milliseconds. That's why I've divided it by 1000. Now for the alarm screen, I've got this here. It's actually pretty easy because I've set an extension over here, this extension right here, Typhoon Alarm. I've set it here in the non-visible components. So when the set alarm button is clicked, then I want this Typhoon Alarm extension to, I want to call this, and I want to set its message to whatever the text you've entered, the hours to the hours you've entered, and the minutes to the minutes you've entered. And it simply ticks away the time, and whenever the time comes, it rings. It's a simple extension. And after this, I've set the name to blank. That's why I've put this text here with the nothing inside, and the hours and minutes to 0. For next, we have the timer. Timer is something similar. Yes, so I've created two global variables, t seconds and start t. That's for time underscore seconds as well as start time. So I set initial this global variable. When this initializes, then I've set it by default to 0, and I've set start time to false. Now when the enter button is clicked, when you've entered the seconds you want for the timer to run for, then I want its text, the text you've entered, timer to text, to become the text that you've entered, as well as I want to set global t seconds to the text you've entered. This timer 2 is nothing but this part. As you can see, it says timer 2. Now again, I want the start button to be enabled. and I also want the seconds.text to become 0. Now when clock1.timer ticks away, then I put a if then else statement. Then if global seconds is greater than 0, that's because then I want to set global t seconds, the global variable I just set, I want to set it to global t seconds minus 1, or else I want to simply set it to 0. If I hadn't put this here, then you would get time in negative. Like if it was 0, then you get minus 1, minus 2, minus string continuing. That's not possible in reality. And I have also set timer2.text to get global t seconds. And now when the start button, I just missed it. When the start button was clicked, I want to set global start time to true, and I want clock1 to be timer enabled, and after this part this comes, and I also want to set the enter button to be enabled. Next up we have this world time screen. This is actually a non-interactive screen. It's for the purpose of people who interact with people from different countries like MNCs and all. So it tells you the time of 9 different locations at one screen. That's all that it is. Now for this screen, it's pretty simple. I've got this thing here. I just inserted images of all the maps, and now if you go to blocks, yes, so I've set another 2 global variables as hours and minutes to 0 in the start, and when clock1.timer, I've also added a clock1 here. So when this clock1 timer flies, then I want to set global hours as well as global minutes, these two, to call the clock and set the hour and minute to whatever the current time is. Now this is just an if then, these two if then statements are just for the purpose of putting a 0 before the digits if they are less than 10. Now New Delhi.to text, this text New Delhi.to, I've set it to join the global hours and global minutes because there's a time in the phone right now. And now for the London, because London is like 4 hours and 30 minutes away, like back from New Delhi, so I've set it to get global hours and if then else statement. Now if global hours is less than 0, if the time in New Delhi is less than 0, then you simply add 20 plus whatever the global hours is and you will get the time. Or if it is greater than 4, then I can simply subtract 4 from it. And similarly I've done for the minutes. If it's less than 30, then you add 30 to the global hours and you'll get the correct time, or you simply subtract 30. Similarly we have done for New York, Dubai, Paris, Moscow, Tokyo, Sydney and Hong Kong. Now nextly we have a pedometer. It's not necessarily a part of a work from home app, but I've put it for the health issue from the health consciousness part. So now if I'll just get up and press the start button and I'll move, then it shows my steps covered at 1 as well as my distance covered. So it tells you in meters, that's 2.19. Now if I press stop button and I still move, then it doesn't, and when I press reset, then the values are reset. The pedometer part is actually quite simple because in the sensors here we've got a pedometer which I've placed over here, built in the MIT App Inventor. Now for the blocks part, it's, as I said, pretty simple. When the start button is clicked, then I call the pedometer to start, and when pedometer simple step, we get quite a couple of options with the pedometer. So I put simple step. So these simple steps, so when the pedometer is running, then these simple steps, I'm going to set steps covered as well as distance covered to fetch the steps as well as the distance from this pedometer. This steps covered and distance covered is actually this part, steps covered, and distance covered is this. Now when the stop button is clicked, I want the pedometer to stop, and when the reset button is clicked, I want the pedometer to reset. And when it's reset, then I also want steps covered this and this distance covered value to be set to 0. Now for the last part, we've got this contact. Now it takes you to this contact screen where it says enter password. Now when I had installed this app, then I had set its password to ABCD. That's what I enter here, and then I get two options with me. I get messages as well as phone call. So when I click messages, then it tells me to enter a contact number here. For example, I'll enter 981151633, and I'll enter message trial, and when I press send, when I press the send button, then it takes me to the actual screen on the phone where I can send the message. When I press send, it gets sent. Now what I would really want to show you here is then when I go to the recent apps, this is actually open from the work from home scheduler, as you can see here, not from the messages app in your phone. And similarly, when I press the back button, I go back to this screen. Now if we gonna go back again and we try the phone call part, then I simply now enter that number again, 516333. And now when I press the call button, similarly it takes me to the screen in the phone, the calling screen in the phone, but my app work from home scheduler is still open. And now when I press the call button, the call is run. Now for these contact place, I've actually put something from the social part. We've got this phone call and texting, and I've entered them here, as well as a notifier. That's for the part, oh I forgot to show you, that's for the part when you enter a wrong number, then it gives you a warning message. Now for the blocks part, we've got the messages over here, as well as the functions for the phone call over here. First for the messages, alright, first we'll go to the password. So when you enter the password and enter button is clicked, then I put a if then else statement. If the password equals to ABCD, that's the password set right now, then I want to set social buttons as well as social buttons to become visible, that's why true, and password arrangement to become false, so it doesn't show. And if that's not true, if you've not entered the wrong password, it's not ABCD, then I want to call this notify one, and I want to show a message dialog with message wrong password entered and a title warning, and I've also got an OK button with it. So now social buttons is actually this part. If I'm press it visible, so this one I've set it by default to non-visible so that you don't see it just yet. And the password arrangement is actually this part. I want this to go away when I press the enter button. Now for the messages part, I have got this send button. When the send button is clicked, then I want texting one. Texting one is actually the part where you send the message, this texting one. So I want this texting one dot phone number and message to be set whatever you've entered in the text box, and I want to call texting one to send a message. And I want to set the contact number and message contact, whatever you had already entered, now to nothing, because you've made this message already. And that's just for the visibility and non-visibility of the buttons. We'll just leave that for now, and we move over to the phone functions now. So when the phone call is clicked, then I want phone call to be visible, and the phone buttons, social buttons, these buttons that I showed, the phone call and the messages button, to become non-visible components that say false, and I also want the password arrangement to be false. Now when the call button is clicked, when you've entered the number already and you press call button, then I set phone call one. Phone call one is this component here. So then I call phone call one or phone number to be set to whatever the number you've entered in the text box, and I call this phone call one to make a phone call. And as usual, as we did here, I'll set the text you've already entered to blank. And yeah, that's it. That's all the bit of coding you require for this app.